Yeah, so VUCA is a acronym from the U.S. military, and it kind of described what the army and military faced after the Cold War. So VUCA, the letters V stands for volatile, U stands for uncertain, C for complex, and A for ambiguity. So if we just hold on there for a second and think about it, probably couldn't be more of VUCA time than right now because we're
100%.
going through lots of volatility, lots of uncertainty. Our world is getting complex, and our world is complex, and there's lots of ambiguity. So, and I guess they used it in the military. They used it to kind of help them move from a mindset where the military were facing the enemy in a field ever since the dawn of ages, all the way through civil wars and World War One and World War Two, and even Cold War thinking, to actually facing an enemy. Let's use Afghanistan, for example, where the enemy was in a crowded marketplace, dressed
Hmm.
like everybody else,
Yeah.
and there could be an explosion any one time. So it really was a mindset change for the US military to get behind this idea of how do they deal in a VUCA environment. So what's it got to do with leaders today? So as we just mentioned, it feels like we're very much in a VUCA environment right now. If anything is important right now as a leader, I think it's your team. And I think it's the team you're leading, and I think it's the team you're a member of. Because it's only by working in teams are we really going to get through what's happening at the moment.
Hmm.
No one of us can possibly deal with what's going on. And if you're going to help your team, either the one you lead or the one you're a member of, I think it's important to think about some counterbalances to VUCA. So let's take the first one. So the first VUCA element is volatile. Right now, again, we're all hanging on to the news every day. What's the new decision? When's the lockdown coming? Who's got it this week? What's going on? So a counterbalance to volatile is the idea of having a clear vision and focusing on values. So if you think about it, even for the next 6 to 8 weeks, what's the vision of your team or the team you're a member of? And one way of looking at that would be uh, what's our vision say around some key stakeholders? What's our vision around our employees? Is our vision that we're going to keep them employed, keep them safe, keep them healthy? What's our vision around our customers or our partners? How are we going to keep them engaged, keep them supplied? What's our vision around our community? You're noticing companies, whiskey distilleries, suddenly moving to making alcoholic wipes, or sports companies now moving their manufacturing to doing something that's useful for the community. So I think it's really interesting as a leader to say, okay, to my team, let's just really buckle down in this volatility. Let's have a vision of what the next 8 weeks mean for us as a team. And one way I help teams do that would be even to sit down with your team and answer the following three sentences. Right now, this team exists to dot, dot, dot. And let's brainstorm what that is. What do we exist for right now? And then the following question is if that's what we exist to be, how do we do that? What are the things we need to focus on, the priorities? Cut away the noise. So this team exists to do something by doing a few things so that this is achieved. And at the core of any successful team is vision and purpose. And I think we need to fit that into a smaller scale right now in order to counteract volatility. There's also a conversation around what are our values. So I think it's really interesting, even as a country right now. Lots of the terminology we're all seeing around the place is we're coming together. This is a great battle for the country. There's a value of community. There's a value of looking after the vulnerable. And so, even as a team, what are going to be our core values right now? Are we all in this together? Do we make sure everybody has a job? But I think it's being explicit in those things. So that's the V part. How do you counteract uncertainty? That's the U. Well, the check to that is you can't get rid of uncertainty right now, but what you can leverage as a leader, either in your own team or the team you're a part of, is to understand. So you can't take away my uncertainty, but are you making space to understand what's going on for me? And again, I think at the core of coaching, for example, is I don't need to fix it for you. If it was that easy, the person would do it themselves. But helping people deal with uncertainty, one of the key ways is just to make the space so you can understand what they're going through, and you're there to listen and empathize and try and support them. So that's the way of counteracting uncertainty. How do you counteract complexity right now? I think it's through clarity. It's being really clear as a leader around your messaging. It's being as transparent as you can. I think it was interesting, going back to St. Patrick's night when Lee Varadkar came on the TV, and there was a bit of criticism at the time of, well, he didn't really say much, there's no detail. But it was kind of interesting what he was doing. In a way, he was doing some of the stuff. He kind of painted the vision, and it wasn't necessarily a nice vision, but the vision was, folks, this is going to be tough, and we're going to really struggle as an economy, but we're here for each other. And that was reassuring. He also tried to show that he understood what was going on for people and their worries. I think he referenced how members of his own family were anxious and worried about things. So he showed that empathy. And then I think what he was trying to do was just give some clarity about what was facing us as much as he could, and trying to be transparent in what they're doing. So again, as a leader, I'm going to challenge people to think about, are you being clear? We can maybe see in other countries right now the presidents or the prime ministers are almost going back and forth on their thinking, and that just creates chaos and even more anxiety. And then now the last letter is A, for ambiguity. So as a leader of a team, how do we deal as a team with ambiguity right now? And the counteract of that is being agile. I think right now it's really interesting to talk to some of my clients. They are starting to do some changes that they've been putting off for a long time because it was status quo. Everything else was going fine, so we didn't really go after that decision or make that innovation. Whereas right now, I see in my own world, everybody's innovating. People are trying out different things, and I think it is a chance to encourage the team to actually deal with the ambiguity by being more agile. Let's knock down some of these sacred cows. Think about how we're teaching our kids right now, the fact that it's online, or even the possibility of there won't be a big leaving cert final exam. There might be other ways of doing that. I think it's a real time as a team to make it safe, to actually think about how can we be more agile in this environment. So that's the idea of VUCA, but then also the idea of vision, understanding, clarity, agility are the ways of counteracting that. And my encouragement would be to have that conversation with your team. The leader doesn't have to solve all this by themselves. It's having that conversation, actually exploring what can we do across these 4 dimensions. So putting aside technology, because I think working virtually is less about technology and it's more about management practice. What I've been sharing with my clients is kind of 5 Ps. And at the core of these 5 Ps is, when you're working virtually, you have to be really, really, really explicit, because all of those subtle signals that we send, or those assumptions that happen when we're face to face, just get wiped out. So imagine when you go visit a very different culture on your holidays, and you're really paying attention to the norms and the behaviors and what people eat and how they treat each other. It's being that explicit with your team. So to unpack the 5 Ps, I think when it comes to our virtual meetings and being effective in that environment, the first P is around purpose. Why are we having this meeting? If that's not clear, it will become something that becomes a bore fest. And bad meetings are terrible, but virtual bad meetings, you can be guaranteed you have lost people within a few minutes, and they probably are shopping on Amazon or buying shoes or checking out Twitter. So it's being really explicit with your team. What is the purpose of this particular meeting? And there's a few choices there, and it could be a blend. So are we here today to make a decision? And if you think about it, how many of us have been in meetings where we thought it was about making a decision, and yet no decision ever got made? So again, being explicit, is it here about making a decision, or are we here to share information? Are we here to coordinate some action out of this, or are we here just to support each other? But I think the first P is being really clear and to keep communicate before and during and after the meeting. That's the purpose of the meeting. So that's the first P. I think the second P that I'd be emphasizing is, how do you prime people to really show up ready for virtual meetings. It allows a lot of spectator behavior. So over to you, leader. Keep me entertained for the next 45 minutes, and I may engage or not, and you may never hear from me. How do you challenge that? And when I talk about priming, I think it's back to, again, being clear on the purpose, but maybe it's the pre-work or setting expectations of what you want people to have ready before they join the call, so that people are primed to be participants as opposed to spectators, and they're primed to contribute as opposed to just listening in the background. The third P, which is really, really important because it's one of the things we're definitely losing by being virtual right now, is playtime. And there's lots of research saying that if you can build in actually unstructured social time into your virtual meetings, that connection really helps people feel part of the team and therefore perform better as a team. And again, it might be counterintuitive because we're very task focused and we get on and we've got an hour and we dive straight into the agenda. I'd be really advocating is make 5 or 10 minutes to play. And let's be creative. Again, there's lots of different ways you can make it fun, and some nice icebreaker questions or getting people to share something, but allow that chit chat that happens usually in face-to-face meetings or water coolers to actually happen online. And let it be, because people need that playtime. It will warm people up and it will connect them. The last two P's are around process norms. And the final one is around participation norms. So what do I mean by norms? I guess I'll never forget the first time I used the Underground in London. You quickly learn the norms, okay? So there's an obvious one like mind the gap, a less obvious one about don't talk to strangers, but the most brutal one was standing on the wrong side of that escalator. And there's a brilliant norm to get millions of people in and out of the Underground every day. And boy, if you stood on the wrong side, you got told pretty quickly by the locals to get out of the bloody way. And so back to this idea that I think process norms, the fourth P, agreeing explicitly with the team. What are our norms about how we're going to make decisions as a team now that we're virtual? Making very clear process norms about how do we want to communicate. Okay, so we're using Zoom right now for the meeting, but if there's an emergency, what are we going to use technology-wise? Is it a phone, or are you going to, send me a chat or something else? So it's being really explicit about how do we do in the moment communication and how do we communicate when we're not all together. But again, there's no right or wrong. It's having the conversation. How do we agree the norms around actions and follow-up in meetings? So again, just being really explicit and getting the team to buy into those process norms. And then the final thing, P, is for me participation norms. And that can be as basic as, is it video on or not? I don't know if you've ever been on a webinar where you're the only one who's on the video, and very quickly you kind of go, I'm the only one on the video, I better turn it off. So we're always looking at these norms. But I think, again, with the team, it's talking about, do we have video on? And yes, so-and-so may not like it, but it's a norm. We want to see each other. Let's agree that up front. What about our norms of using chat while we're on the meeting? Or maybe even the norm that's often happening on virtual meetings, I would be very explicit saying that silence is not agreement. So when I'm asking people, do you have any questions or do you agree, I'm not going to let silence be the answer, because that's open to lots of assumptions. So even us having a norm as a team of say yes or no or nothing from me, but being explicit. So purpose, prime the people, build in playtime, have process norms explicitly agreed, and have participation norms explicitly agreed. They're the 5 things I'm saying to my clients right now.
And I wonder if you could just spend a couple of minutes talking about what your thoughts are around affirmation and how it can help people be better leaders.
So affirmation, I guess a few things. I'm a great believer in research that says great leaders don't lack weaknesses. So we all have things we're not good at. What does show up for great leaders is that they have a number of perceived strengths. And this is research out of the US by Zenger and Folkman. And so think about this from your own experiences. Think about the best leader you've ever worked with. So
Hmm.
get somebody into your head there. And did they have some outstanding strengths? And the answer I usually get back is yes. It might have been their people skill, being strategic. They may have been amazing at driving for results. It may have been their integrity, but I think we can all think of something that stands out in our minds. Now, if I asked, and were they perfect or did they have any weaknesses? Well, the answer is they weren't perfect. And yes, they did have weaknesses, but they compensated because they had these outstanding strengths. And if they're really good leaders, they also knew their weaknesses and they had people around them who could compensate.
Hmm.
So for me, there's a real thing about what's going to see me through this VUCA environment right now. I'm not going to change spots. I'm not going to become something I'm not. And this affirmation exercise, it is as simple as writing down the words I am. And again, when I did that, I had my wobble about a week and a half ago, and I went, okay, hold on a sec. What do I know about me? What are my strengths? And I wrote down things like I am flexible. I changed career from being an accountant to being an executive coach. I mean, there's flexibility. I moved out of a US multinational into running my own business. I know I can flex. Okay, let's bank that in the account. I know I'm flexible. That's going to be useful in my backpack. I know I'm really good at connecting with people.
Hmm.
Okay, so why don't I get really intentional about reaching out to Michelle and Pep Talk, or reaching out to some of my clients, or getting involved in what other coaches are doing? Use that network that has served me well in the past. Let's put that in the backpack.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm really good at getting energetic and starting initiatives. Well, let's do that. Let's start recording daily coaching videos. So I think for me, the affirmation piece, it's not about claiming I'm the best in the world. It's not that my head won't fit through the door. I can hear my mother's voice saying, who do you think you are? But I'll just ignore that for the moment. Um, and I think if there's anything I need in my backpack right now as I start leading through this very different terrain, I think it's what I'm really good at. And it's knowing then that if I'm not great at something, how do I get some other people to help me with that part?